I'm a horse fanatic, and I do a lot of horses. I pretty much primarily call myself an equine artist, although I'm kind of branching into other animals. I can do other animals. But I just really drawn to horses for several reasons. They have beautiful lines. You know, you always talk about cars having beautiful lines. Horses have beautiful lines too, very beautiful gestures, and they're just very sleek, beautiful animals, in my opinion. I got my start. My mom was a single mom, divorced when I was very young, and I had 3 older brothers and sisters. And when they're quite a bit older than I am, so they were in school. So my mom at the time couldn't afford a babysitter. So she took me to work with her. She is a waitress, and I sat on a stool 8 hours a day drawing on napkins. And I perfected my horses on restaurant napkins, and I really learned the gift of gab too, because I had a lot of people that would sit down and chat to me. I was only like 3 or 4 years old, so kind of got the gift of gab doing that. I think when I was I'm a native to New Mexico, but my mom moved to Northern California when I was very small. My first art contest, I entered the San Francisco Chronicle, and of course it was a mare and colt, and got an honorable mention in the Key to the City, and kind of just been doing that through my life. I've went to commercial art school for like a semester. It just wasn't my thing. Just drawn to animals, and I had a professor tell me that, you know, probably fine art would probably be better for me. And so I've just been doing that. I've been distracted with horses and just doing things. So now I'm trying to settle down. My goal is trying to get into galleries, and I bounce back and forth with pastels. I started working in oils. Just because I wanted to work on a grand scale, so I'm doing a lot of like 36 by 48 paintings right now, and I don't know why I decided to do that. Sometimes it's tedious, it just takes a lot of time. So, just talking about horse, that's a little bit about me. Talking about animals. Animals have many, many expressions. They have many gestures. And I observe them a lot. I'm kind of one of these people that want to be out in the middle of nowhere. I ride out in the middle of nowhere, and you see a lot of wildlife, and you can kind of sneak up on them on a horse and just observe them, and just observe movement and things like that. So with this horse's movement here, I believe this was a Mustang photo, and got a lot to talk about reference photos on that. If you've observed a mare and colt, you kind of get the movement of the colt, and they're really sassy little things, and they like to twitch their tail and bob their tail. So with this painting, I tried to capture that, and I call it my little spider leg colt. He's bobbing along and twitching, with his mother. The next one, sorry if I'm going fast, I'm a little nervous here. This pair here has an interesting story. They were registered from the Bastard Kill Pen. My friend took the photo after they were rescued. And so anyway, this is the photo that she took. The expressions that I wanted to capture with this is the mare is very protective. They've just come from a very traumatic scene, being in a kill pen. So they were in the slaughter pipeline, and they were rescued. And so I love the photo. I was inspired by that. It actually had a bunch of trees and stuff behind it, but I'm not a very good landscape painter. I'll tell you that right now. I pretty much stink at it. So I try to just focus on animals. But anyway, they're in a safe place now. But that was the deal. She may have given birth in the kill pen. I'm not sure. But with donkeys, they're fragile, and you have to get them out right away because they get very sick. The next one here is called Her Majesty, and it was taken from a reference photo that I changed a lot. I had a lot of trouble with this, and I've gotten now where if I don't like something, I just make it disappear. So pretty much what I did with the body here, it's like, because I used 3 or 4 different reference photos, and kind of got myself in a jam. But Her Majesty is a horse that's looking at you, very cautious and very curious, but they don't want to be caught. You know, they're Mustangs. So when you're out there with the camera, you're kind of invading their space. And, you know, that's kind of what Her Majesty is about, is like, why are you looking at me? What's going on here? Are you going to round me up with helicopter? So that's Her Majesty. And the Girls of Galisteo, I had a lot of fun doing this one because for once I kind of like the landscape. Like I said, I just really don't do landscape very well. And when I'm riding out in the middle of nowhere, I come across a lot of antelope, and they're very cautious animals. And they'll kind of stop and look at you, but they're not going to let you get too close. And that's kind of what this picture's about. They just like, you know, you're in their world, you're in your space. And the next one, Jack. I'll tell you what inspired this one. I love jackrabbits. I love rabbits in general. We had a little rabbit, jackrabbit, that would stay under the bush. We had a little sage, and I snuck up on him once, and he had kind of like a little house carved out in there, and I just stayed. I was on the horse, and I just stayed and I watched him, and they don't want you to see them, so they're going to pretend like you're not there. So I watched him, watched his eyes and his nose, and kind of remembered the expression, and then went through some reference photos to kind of get the exact coloring and stuff. And that's how I got Jack. He was actually an inspiration under one of our sage. And this is my mare, Aspen. She's a funny mare. She was rescued from a kill pen in Louisiana. She is a huge inspiration to me. She has beautiful lines. She has a very Spanish look about her. And I get a lot of inspiration with her gestures because she does a lot of funny things. This expression on her face and her ears and her mouth is kind of her kick butt expression. She likes to fight everything. But now she's in love with the gelding, but she still wouldn't want to fight him if she was out with him. So this is kind of her look. She sees what she's after, gets that really defiant look. And by the way, this is called opinionated mare, which fits her to a T. And she charges and just literally tries to kick and kill the other horse.
Is that like a brand?
Yes, that is a Frise brand. That is a Mustang Frise brand. And like I said,
once again,
pardon me?
what kind of brand?
It's called a Frise brand, and I can't remember what the letters are now. Dang it, I forget. But it's a certain brand, and every Mustang that's captured gets this brand. And so the U is for the United States. The next two numbers that's on top of each other is the date of birth. So she was captured young. It's 2007. And then the other digits, numbers, represents the area from where they're from and when they were captured. And so she is from Wyoming. And Wyoming has a lot of beautiful Mustangs. They kind of go back to a lot of the Spanish horses. And they've got the Roman nose, the real pretty gestures. They're real stout horses. They're not very tall, but they're real stout and just hardy. And they seem to have great personalities. Everyone I know that has a Wyoming Mustang loves them. So that's Aspen, and she's my little pride and joy. I've had her since 2018. This painting is of another horse looking cautious, and beautiful gestures and lines. I have a friend, her name's Nigel Ryder. She's a photographer, and she lets me use her photos, and I can use everything about them. So it's nice that I have that. You know, if I find a photo, she's very generous. Some photographers are not, but she is very generous and let me use the whole photo. What I was going to say about photos is I do use a lot of reference photos. I go on the internet, and the one thing that I have researched is you cannot copyright a pose. So if you see a pose out there that you like, by all means use it. Just change the color. It's kind of what I'm doing here today. You change the color, change the background, change whether it's left or right, whatever. You can do that because you can't copyright a pose. And I did a lot of research on that because I see a lot of reference photos that I really like. But you don't want to copy them. But as far as copyrighting a pose, there's no such thing. So you're good with doing that. And this is a very unhappy horse. You can tell by the way the ears are kind of pricked. His nose is a little clamped. He's another BLM Mustang. The story behind this photo is he is in one of the BLM holding pens, and he's being auctioned off. So they have a program now I could go into a whole other rant about that, where they're adopting these horses out. And when they're in the pens, they're swishing them around. They got flags. They're still very wild. They're very unhandled. So I wanted to capture, and it's a work in progress right now. It's a large oil, and the name of it's going to be called Lost Freedom. By the way, my husband names most of my paintings, which is really great because I do the work and it's like, I'm done. Name them for me, please. But you can see he's got kind of what we would call a furrowed eyebrow. So he's got a very worried look about him. And I noticed that with my own horses too, and my own Mustang. She gets a little wrinkles in her eyebrows. And they're doing studies now with horses. They can read people's expressions. They did a study where if you cover part of your face, a horse isn't very inclined to, back off from you. If they see you and you're scrawling, a horse is not inclined to approach you, which I find is very interesting. So, they're doing all these studies. Horses, they say they have, kind of like the mentality of a 3-year-old child. So they're not stupid animals by no means. They can read expressions and gestures, and I can tell. I have one mare that she's my difficult mare, and it's kind of like if I don't have the time, I don't take the time, leave her alone because everything will be a disaster the whole day. So that's Bella. And I think that's it as far as photos. Just as far as expression goes, you got the worried eye, you got the pricked ears, and kind of the clamped nose. And that's important when you're doing animals. It's really important to kind of capture that stuff, because if you don't, it falls flat. And I think that's it when it comes to the photos. I picked up the pastels this week, and I kind of love that they're so instantaneous, especially after doing large oils, which is not instantaneous. It's like 6 months at a time. And I found that I really don't need all the pastels that I thought I needed. And so I'm basically using only maybe 5 colors or so with this. This is Clairefontaine Pastel Matte. This is a new color. I'm not so sure I like it. I was going to do a bay horse, but the colors just didn't work with the purple, so I decided to work with the color wheel, basically, and do a complementary color to the purple. So I chose a buckskin horse. This is my study yesterday, so it kind of works with the paper a little bit. Like I said, I don't know if I'll buy the color again or not. I don't know that I like it that much, but it works pretty well with the gold. What I was also going to say about, painting horses and animals, there's no corners to them. They're very soft. They're very round. Their muscles are very round. There's, they only have intersections is what I like to say. So it's kind of like drawing that apple. You got to work with the roundness of a muscle because there's just not any sharp edges. And I don't really like to do hard edges on animals either because they're always moving.
Put it on the easel so they can see it.
Oh.
There you go.
My husband, he's a great one. So pretty much that's the color of horse we're gonna do today, I think. And going back to reference photos, this is a photo I just pulled off the internet. Love the simple lines. They're very just elegant. I would call that elegant. But like I said, the color didn't work, so I had to change the color a little bit. So here's an example of using a reference photo and completely changing it. This horse doesn't look like that horse. It sort of does, but it's the same pose. It's just completely different. So you get away with using a photo. And I do that a lot. And I do a lot of compositions of photos, but I'm learning not to do that so much because I always get myself in a jam. So I usually start mid-tone. I kind of just work into the mid-tones, darks and lights back and forth. So we're gonna keep going, I guess. I work pretty light because I'm gonna overlap a lot of colors. Horses have scapulas, kind of like people. So this is a shoulder. It's dented in here because it's a shoulder blade. They have a big rounded muscle there, kind of comes up into here and down. And a muscle here and a muscle here and down. Am I in the way? I kind of am in the way, huh? Like, yikes, I see myself. That's scary. And I like this Clairefontaine paper because it can actually take a lot of abuse. And I abuse my paintings quite a bit. I don't use a projector, and I usually don't use a grid. What I like to do is speed drawings, much like what you do in life drawing, where you're just scribbling out the shapes really quick, and you can pretty much get your proportions right. And the one thing with horses is because they're an animal with a tight skin, lots of muscle, and the joints, there's no faking it. You got to get it right. So you do need to kind of study anatomy and bones. And I usually do work by doing circles and circles, and there's some planes. This is a pretty simple drawing because it's, flat to the, it's to the side. But they have a lot of joints. They have a lot of veins that show up and a lot of tendons. So there's no faking it. You have to do it. If you're doing like a cat or dog, you can get away with a lot because they're not as defined. I am working on a buffalo right now, and I took it off the internet, a reference photo, and of course changed it. But I mean, this buffalo has been photographed this way so many times that you couldn't even call it copyrighted because everybody photographs a buffalo like this. So kind of boring to me. Yeah. But that was the easiest animal I think I've ever painted was a buffalo because they're just shoulder, they're just kind of like a big funny blob. And you can't really see a lot of definition in them, maybe when you get into the knees and stuff. But even their face, I mean, there's not a lot of definition. You can just play with the fur on their face. So once again, a horse she's got this, this horse has got this line here, but horse really doesn't have that line. So it's going to be a rounded shoulder, and you just got to kind of be careful and kind of eventually get that roundedness off a little bit. And I'll get it here in a minute. And I'm using a lot of purple in the shadows on this horse because he's gold. And like I said, I like to work off the color wheel a little bit in complementary colors, and I use that in the shadows a lot. So you're going to kind of round it a little bit. Here. You got this kind of little muscle here. It's a little thing when they arch their neck. I'm going into here a little. Work on the face a little bit. I use a lot of purplish gray for the nose. I don't really use a lot of black.
What type of pastels are you using?
Oh, good question. I use a lot of Rembrandt for animals because they're a little bit harder, but yet on this paper they still come off nice. So they're not too hard. I've got some. Use a lot of Terry Ludwig for the softer work. Duron, what was the hard pastel? New pastels. Some of those for details. I got a pencil, kind of for the eye, and that's pretty much it. I only have about 15 colors up here, and I'll probably only use half of those for this painting, which kind of scares me a little bit. Because working with oils, I've realized I don't really need all the colors I use. I've learned to use just a handful of colors, and that's kind of translating off into the paintings, and I'm really excited about that. It's kind of, you know that old saying, don't complicate the simplicity? Sometimes when we get so many colors, we kind of complicate the simplicity. By the way, I use a brush a lot. And I think I've gotten in a few habits when I'm painting. Maybe it doesn't work as well, but if I want to just kind of smooth that out a little bit, I do with my finger. I use my finger a lot.
So you use the brush for blending?
I do, and I kind of take off some of the pastel. For instance, the color that I'm actually using on this horse, he's kind of a dapple color, so he's got a lot of brown in him. But I don't want a flat color, so I'll take a little bit of pastel off and I'll leave a little bit of a choppy color in there just to kind of make it look real, because the horses are kind of iridescent in the light a little bit, I guess is the best expression. So this is kind of like really right here. And I kind of try to stay with the flow of the horse. And the reason why I chose this crop was because I thought I could do it faster than the whole horse. I do want to do this pose larger and the whole horse eventually. And instead of white, I'm using this brighter yellow. I don't like to use a lot of white, and I don't like to use black. I don't use black in a pupil. I use ultramarine blue and raw umber. Makes a translucent pupil, because if you use black as a pupil, it looks like the pupil is outside of the eye. I used to work for an eye doctor, so as I was looking at people's eyes, I really looked. And a translucent color is ultramarine blue, and I think it's raw umber. And I actually believe I learned that from Daniel Green. He never used black as a pupil either. He kind of used the blue and the brown. I went to one of his workshops way back in the 90s. I thought I wanted to do portraits. I still like doing them, but I don't know. I just stick with animals. I like animals. I'm going to kind of knock out this space a little bit here. Any questions?
When you're drawing your initial sketch, are you using pastel or charcoal or any other medium?
On this paper, I have found that a 6B pencil works great because it erases. without leaving much. If I use a pastel, you have a lot of pigment and it's a little bit harder to take off. But with that one, and then I use vine charcoal a lot too. But the charcoal kind of will muddy a pastel a little bit, you know, if you get into that. See, I got into some bad habits here. So it's interesting because I'm not using this color.
What do you mean by that? It's interesting because you're not using that color.
I'm not using the reference photo horse. So I pretty much got this horse where I want it. I'm just going to kind of pick out the highlights, and then I'm going to switch to another photo of the horse that I'm actually, the color I'm copying, so to speak. I like that you can kind of tap this color down a little bit with these two.
Do you always do a small study of the animal first?
No, not to this extent. I was a little panicky yesterday, and I was working on this, trying to do a little bit of an underpainting, and I was so afraid that I didn't have a road map of where I was going that I didn't want to stink too bad up here. I wanted to kind of have kind of a little bit of a road map, and so by doing this, I think I'm going to start doing this more often. By doing this, I realized I didn't need a bunch of pastels. And I'm kind of panicky because I don't have a lot of pastels in here, and I'm thinking, well, that's what I did this with, so I should be okay. And I like to kind of leave streaks. I do a little bit too much detail, and I'm trying not to, actually. I'm trying to kind of chill out with so much detail. Isn't that everybody's story, though? You know, you get in there and you do so much, and I'm trying not to. I am not even using black on the legs. I'm using eggplant. Pretty much so. And even in the mane, it's not black, it's eggplant. It just, the black looks so harsh. So I just decided this. And I kind of just keep my stuff a little loose here. And even in the highlights, I'm using more of a lilac color. So I just use the ends, and then I just kind of tip out the rest there. I'm trying really hard to keep it loose. That wasn't where I really wanted to go, but happy accidents, right? So, and I'll address all this with a lilac. Buckskin horses have black rimmed ears most of the time and black tips, so that's always kind of fun. Short there.
How many horses do you have?
I have 5. I just lost my old mare. I used to barrel race, and I had her for a long time. She had really bad arthritis in her knees, and she's 25, and we kind of did all we could do to keep her comfortable. And I just had to put her down in May, and then 5 days later I lost a dog. It's like May was a really bad month. Really, really bad month. You know, they get to be family, for sure. Now for this painting, I am going to use black. And I say with eyes, you know, a lot of people, I think, in my opinion, overdo eyes. if you're standing, 20 feet away from a horse, you can't see everything that's going on in their eyes. You paint the color, you might get a little highlight. It's never really bright because the eyelid and everything is kind of shadowing it. So you don't want to just, and because I do this all the time, I go plumb crazy with eyes. They're my favorite thing to paint. And I'll have stuff in an eye, and it's like, wait a minute, there's no way you can see that. I mean, if you look at photographs, it's very minimal what you can see because of the shading of the lid. So just remember that. I have to remind myself. So I'm going to go ahead and use black on this one because I might add a little brown at the top here just for a little highlight, but not much.
You use black on that mane?
No, it's eggplant. It's Terry Ludwig's eggplant. That was what was kind of helpful about that study because I needed to find a good, highlight to go with that eggplant. So I found like a smoky purple that works pretty well. I think that's it's hard to see, huh? So a horse has in their knee structure, let me kind of pull it up here, I know it's hard to see. They come in a little bit at their knee, and of course they have tendons, and they kind of come in at the ankle. So you get that joint, and then of course it's shadowed down there. And I'm going to just kind of keep adding this as it goes because it's kind of scary because it is a dark color. And actually this horse here kind of goes up. But because you're working with gold, it's kind of a variegated up here, so it's good to smudge it a little bit because there's no harsh lines. With the purple and the gold, and I don't really even think that's Terry Ludwig there. It's a good contrast. You're not really going too crazy or muddy in the colors because it works pretty well. So this is kind of a little complicated intersection here. I'm going to call it intersection because he's got the front leg out, and you don't want to be too harsh because, like I said, they're all rounded. Everything's rounded, so you got to kind of keep that back a little bit. And also the angle of this horse is he's actually got his head kind of tipped away from you. So it was important to keep the eye high up here. And I'm going to just kind of clean that up a little bit. And kind of the inspiration for this is the Luciano breed. They got the powerful Roman nose and all that stuff going on for them.
You use the expression Roman nose. What does that mean?
Their nose kind of is convex. They kind of have a convex profile, kind of like me. I have a little convex profile in my nose, and so horses from the Spanish origins have that kind of Roman nose.
And other horses have
like an Arabian will have more of a concave, a dished face. So depending on the breed that you're looking at, and I've just gotten really fond of these Roman noses because there's just so much character in them. I think there's a lot of character. Arabians are beautiful, but those big noses are kind of, there's so much character in them. And I look at character when I'm doing horse. Sometimes a horse may not be the most beautiful horse, but there'll be something about that. Like my Mustang mare, she has a big nose. And it's really, it's my favorite part about her. She just got this big snout. And it fits her, and she's not very tall either. That's her character. So I'm going to go into a little dusky rose here for some shadows because they do kind of have a violet color. I don't think I'm doing this very fast.
Plenty of time.
It's 11:29.
Okay.
I find it fascinating that you're reversing the image without reversing the photograph.
My husband asked me why I did that, and I had no idea I did that till he mentioned it. And
That would confuse the daylights out of
I was going to ask anyone, have you ever read the book Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain?
it. I tried.
Yeah, it's really hard. And being that I have a dyslexic mind, I guess I just did this, and I wasn't even aware that I did it. But there you go against your copywriting. You just flip it over to the other side. I wasn't even
I
really.
have to manually flip it.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware I did it till he mentions, like, oh wow, I did. I thought that was kind of funny too. I was like, wow, okay. What was I thinking? So we're getting into a little bit of the shine here. Looks really like this here.
You may not like that background color, but I think it's working.
It works with the yellow, huh? It sure didn't work with the red or the bay color. I was not happy with that at all.
That's one of my favorite colors for doing portraits.
Ah, I bet it would because of the undertone of the skin. A little shadow right here under his nose. He's scratching at his leg is what he's doing. So he's actually biting. And he's got his mouth open. Like, I don't really want to make white teeth on this horse. So I'm going to tone that down a little bit if I get to that part. Got some brown one here. And because I'm nervous, I'm not keeping anything in order. So I'm having to hunt for my pastels here a little bit.
Oh, the nervousness does not show.
Oh, thank you. A gift of gab, huh? So with this, I'm just kind of touching it because I don't want that color to be flat. And this is part of my effort to be a little bit looser. And this particular colored horse has dapples. So, I kind of lost my triangle here. And so, yeah, when you say, I have to turn this upside down, I am really kind of, it's hard because when I was doing this, he's upside down. I'm going to have to work sideways here. And the one thing nice about, smaller paintings, is you can do that. With my big paintings, I'm just kind of stuck. So I can kind of see where I'm going here a little bit better. Happy with that. Kind of like I feel like I can really do this. I don't look like it right now. I don't feel like I'm doing my job right now, but
It looks like you are.
thank you.
Just fine.
So it's got a little lighter color in here.
You're using your pinky a lot. Do you ever get blood on your fingers?
Not with this pastel matte paper. It's
It's a little gentler.
yeah, and it's got a plastic backing, and you wouldn't think that it would grab the paper or the pastel like it does, but it really does, and it's kind of become my go-to with animals. I like UArt too, but I have taken off my fingerprints and actually had my hands hurt because I've done so much with that.
Would you please explain what dapple is?
Dapple is it's like a color, and then it's darker, and it's almost like spots, but it's not. It's like a darker color of the overall horse, and actually dappling is a picture of health too. If a horse has dapples, they're very healthy, like a sorrel or a regular horse. Now, gray horses, you see a lot of dapple grays, and when you see a gray horse with just like looks like water droppings on them, that's a dapple gray, and those are really the most we see in dapples. But sorrels and bays and all of them get them, especially if they're in really good health. I don't know why that is, but that's what I've been told. Let's see here. I gotta address this. Let's see here if I can get a little. My gold colors here are just so close to each other that I'm trying not to do too much, and I'm going to go over this with a brush in a minute. So they go down in here, kind of down in here a little bit. I don't want to do too much, but that's the one thing too I like about the Rembrandts is you can kind of get hard and kind of streak that across there and blend with them at the same time without doing too much damage. And like I said, I don't like to go over the whole color because I like to leave a little splotchy, and this is really bright. I might go over that a little bit. Tone that down a little bit. And this horse's neck is funny, and I noticed it when I picked it because it's dark in here, but yet there's a curvature, his throat here. I'm going to kind of just do it a little bit. It's not so much in the painting, but this is actually light, and then it's dark on the inside, and that's what I talk about, that roll, because they have no sharp corners or edges. You got to get that roll. And it takes a little while to get that. I have to work with that a lot, because they do have a little, he's got a little highlight there, a little reflective light. Yes. I might want to turn my head up again. And it's funny, I used that black pencil on his eye, but his eye is not popping at all, like I kind of want it to. There's a lot going on as far as bags, and they have like a bluish gray skin around their eyes. The hair's not all the way up to their eyes. They got a very delicate skin. I'm not catching that right now with this, so I need to work on that a little bit without messing that up too bad.
No wonder you won awards at a young age.
I have to say with horses, I can, because I've drawn them so much, pretty much handle drawing them without looking at a reference photo, but it's just because I have them, and I'm constantly looking. I'm always looking at them and their anatomy. I love them. They're my passion. They're my real passion. I'm gonna try something with this charcoal here. And they got horses have a little eyelid. And of course, with a horse this far away, you're not going to draw his eyelashes, but they have eyelashes. And but don't draw what you don't see. I'm trying to really adhere to that rule because I don't. And it's like, oh, I know that horse has eyelashes. But they do have an eyelash, and they've got this eye bone here, this little furrow. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that with black here. And like my Mustang mare, she has bags under her eyes. And it's funny when she's stressed, those bags get bigger. Kind of like people. And I always go out there and ask her, did you not get any sleep last night or what? She has big bags under her eyes, which is funny. I'm going to have to work on that shape a little bit there. Not too much, but a little. And then, of course, with the eyes, you have, the water line. You have the actual, a lot of horses don't have white in their eye. They do back in their eye. They're supposed to have the largest eyes of any mammal. I don't know about that because I look at a giraffe and their eyes are huge. But, they have that white membrane back there. And some of them, they do show, and some of them, they don't. But they do have an inner skin, and when I'm doing something up close, you've got to kind of get that, and it's pink and it's brown and it's fleshy, it's meaty, and so if you're doing something really up close, you probably want to get that in there. Maybe not if you don't want to do a lot of detail. Like I said, I really kind of mess up on that a lot, my detail. So I'm going to just add a little brown in this, and I have to work on that here a little bit because you don't want your animal to look soulless, like they don't have a soul and they're a creature from another dimension. So it is good to put a little color, but not overdo it. So I don't know if that kind of, okay, maybe we'll go upright now.
None of them have blue eyes, do they?
No, they do. There's a lot of them that have blue eyes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a lot of blue-eyed horses out there. They're usually paints and whites and cremellos, and some of them beautiful blue eyes, and there's horses with one of each color.
Really?
Yeah, so they come in all shapes and sizes, just like humans. Really kind of fascinating. I don't have any blue-eyed horses. There used to be a stigma against blue-eyed horses. They claimed that they couldn't see well. A lot of blue-eyed horses do get cancer of the eye. So that's always a problem. You've got to kind of black out their hide during the summer because they sunburn. So they do get cancer in the eye. A lot of Mustangs get cancer in the eye that's white-faced. Here I am again turning my head to match this. So this guy kind of has like a little U underneath his eye here of a darker color. I don't know if that's the color yet, but I think that'll make a little difference because you want to kind of get some definition in there. And then a little triangle up here because they have a hollow spot above their eye. And I kind of want a little shadow under here. I don't know that I should have used brown, but it works for now. I really like the purple against the gold as a shadow. And even you might have like a, you have fur in a horse's ear, has a lot of fur in it. So you don't want to, I think that's getting there a little bit better. And actually this whole top of his head is kind of shadowed here. But lumen value is pretty close to the paper there. Yeah, it's been a while, so I'm really touching this probably a lot more than I should be. And I admit I do that with my oils too. I have my hands in everything. A lot of times with the oil, I'll just start off with a base color and I'll put it on with a rag and then I take it off. I leave the highlighted parts and the muscles, and I just take the excess paint off of it. And it works pretty well for an underpainting to do that, believe it or not.
You have 10 minutes left.
Keeping track of me.
15. 50.
It's a 15.
You're fast.
I hope I'm not boring everyone to death.
11:45.
So this muscle here, if you see it in a real horse, there's no line, there's no fold. It's just a muscle and it's rolled. And it's really, it takes a while to build that up because you're going to have, you use several colors underneath it. But, there's a muscle here. And like I said, they don't really have corners. They just have rounded muscles. Go back to the first picture for a second to get that. That's funny. This right here kind of bugs me. It's kind of in there, but go down here. And I try to kind of stay with the planes of the horse, the way the muscles go. So they have, a big muscle here. So I try not to go against their muscle. Probably would have helped if I would have had a little more body here. And this horse is a little darker in the neck here. And so, just for example, I'll knock some of this stuff off and I'll just kind of tap it. Just to give a little more just dimensions, I guess you could say, in the color. A little more texture. Just kind of scratch it. And in the dapple, I'll just kind of, like dapple it around there. And that doesn't look like a dapple, but. And I just kind of smooth it because everything is just rolled. If I find with a brush, I can kind of do that. And this is just a red sable. It's a cheap red sable brush. I just picked it out of a bunch today. But it kind of knocks it back a little bit. A horse's nose is not smooth either. They have what they call little pimples on them. And what it is where their whiskers come out. So they got little lumpy noses and they sunburn, and kind of like the donkey picture, she had a lot of like crusty stuff on her nose, which I painted it in. So this is, a little dark. So I might just kind of tone that down to smooth it a little bit.
You have to worry about sunburn on the whole horse too.
Yeah, depending on their color. I clipped Skip's back, he's a paint, and I clipped his back where the blanket goes because he's ruining my pads. He's shed so bad in the spring, so I thought, well, I'm going to try to spare these blankets that I'm buying. So I actually clipped a saddle pad deal on him, and I got to looking at him, kind of got a little bit warm then, and I thought, my gosh, he's really pink under that skin. And I usually lock him out of his stall because they have the whole run to go poop in, and they decide to poop in these fresh shavings. I know why they do that. They don't want to splatter any pee on them. There's like, it's clean, or it's cleaner to go in the stall. Not easier for me, because I hate it. And David named my mare that I just recently lost, he called her Piggy, because she would not go outside for nothing. And Skip goes all over the place, and I thought, well, if I leave him out, he's going to get sunburn on his back. I better not do that, because especially where the saddle goes. So we do a lot of trail riding back in the middle of nowhere. That's kind of our little thing to do. And we only have 2 riding horses right now. The rest of them are all retired and old. I have a geriatrics, and our riding horses are getting close to geriatrics, but they still got a ways to go. If you take care of them, they last a long time. They get supplements and joints, and all that kind of stuff. So let me find that color. So this is where the brush is really going to come in handy here. Because right now that just looks like a lot of harsh lines. So you just come in and soften that up a little bit. And it'll kind of give you some texture. That's funny that that's purple, huh? And I might start using a little bit of the harder edges here. And a little tighter here. You know what, I'm going to try a little bit of that purple in his eye a little bit there. Works. The black was kind of dull. And as a kid drawing horses, you know, horse's nose looks a lot like a paisley. So when I was a little kid, I'd make the jaws curl and I'd make a paisley for the nose. But it is kind of shaped like a little paisley there.
What will you do with the background?
That's a good question. I don't know. I've thought about that. I mean, normally I would probably put kind of like an abstract portrait type background on that. But I don't really know what to do with that color.
You almost don't need to do anything.
Almost, you don't. And then if you look at the, if you look at this, I mean, it kind of works.
Yeah.
You know, it ends up being a more of a portrait of a horse. But if you go on the internet and you watch a lot of people that's doing pastels, they do use a colored paper and they just leave it alone. But I would a lot of times come in and I would chip in where I wanted to take in the leg with another color or something, you know, a background color. But on this one, you know, it's kind of a funny color. I don't know. I think I like the charcoal color better. It's a little bit more versatile. I could have probably used that and did a lot different colored horse than what I'm doing. But it's all good. I mean, I'm not going to fuss over it too much. I kind of like it. It'll maybe grow on me a little bit. But I thought I'd try it. And, you know, if a line's a little too bright, you know, like I say, just go back and kind of knock off the color a little bit, soften it. I think because horses are always moving, I don't really think you should have, I mean, you've seen paintings where horses look like they're just suspended in air and they're not really moving. I think if you watch a horse move, if you add a little blurriness to their legs, you kind of get a sense that they're moving. If you just kind of stick it, that's what I'm going to call it, is stick it, they look like they're suspended and they don't look like they're moving. They're like, so you kind of want to try to think of movement. And another thing that's helpful for me as far as horses go, because I ride, I kind of feel what a horse feels like. And it's kind of in my mind. So when I'm doing their legs and their feet and stuff like that, you kind of feel that placement. You feel the head, you feel the bobbing, and just, you know when a hip's dropped with the stride. So you can get their feet placement, and you kind of know where their back is. So, it kind of works out that way. If you spend a lot of time on them, I guess you could say. Like I said, they're my passion. I have all kinds of animals. The oils that I work with are water inescapable. I use the Daniel Smith. I have a canary, dogs, and spade toads in my studio. So I don't use any fixative in the house. I heard the canaries will drop. I don't know. So none of that stuff gets used in my studio. I have to go outside to do it. But they kind of keep me company. Not the new one. The new one is
5 minutes.
okay. I'm just not even sure where to go right now. I need to think. I'm not doing it. So right here is kind of that rounded area from the dark. Just so we can get that here. I don't know if I like that color purple here, but we're going to try. So don't really like the line there, but I'll knock that back a little bit. This is just a bristle brush. And when you really overwork your pastels, those can be quite the friend. Really working bold here, and I don't really want to. I want to keep that soft. So you see that's kind of the rolledness here a little bit. Pretty sharp right in here, so. I like to glaze. And, horses have veins in their face, but to be honest with you, you probably wouldn't see this horse's veins because he's too far away. So don't paint them. I have to tell myself that because they're fun to do.
I'm hoping you can finish this and post it in our newsletter and also in the video.
I definitely will.
Yeah.
I definitely
That's
will.
great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's
Just amazing.
kind of hard to paint. It's kind of that left brain, right brain thing. When you're on the right brain, you can't speak, you can't really function and kind of think what you're doing. I normally would slow down a lot and kind of get in here and do that, but I will finish it.
Beautiful. from Maryland. Help yourself to the magazines that she brought in.
Somebody else for all the fun.
Oh.
Other people brought some too.
There's a lot there.
Thank you, Vicki.
You're welcome. Did anybody see what I did with that brush?